Get you away to your lunch on time, so we're going to make a start. My name is James Dipple-Johnstone. I am the Director of Investigation and Supervision for the SRA. You're very welcome this afternoon here, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves as well.
Good afternoon, my name is Debra Malpass. I'm Head of Research and Analysis here at the SRA, and it's our team who produced the Risk Outlook.
Good afternoon everyone, my name is Paul Hastings. I'm the team leader for the Thematic risk team at the SRA.
So, welcome to our session entitled The Risk Outlook 2016. In today's session we're going to provide an update and a bit of coverage on Brexit, as far as it's possible to know given the state of information that's available so far, but also touch upon two emerging issues and latest developments on risks that have been with us some time but continue to change and evolve for the sector. The first of which is crime and information security, and the second of which is the topic of money laundering, which over the coming year will see some significant changes both in terms of the legislative framework with the implementation of the fourth money laundering directive, but also the recently introduced criminal finances bill through the Houses of Parliament as it passes through into law. In terms of the risk outlook itself, the risk outlook provides an overview of risks to protect the people who use legal services, but also to support our general objectives to support the operation of the rule of law and the proper administration of justice. The risk outlook, there are details and leaflets in your packs this morning. There's more information on our website with a link if there's any questions you want to ask. We publish the report on an annual basis, but also have an online tool that we try to update at least twice a year. And we also, in between those updates, we put out specific topic papers, warning notices and risk alerts as any new issues or trends emerge from either the casework we see or the intelligence we receive from other regulators and law enforcement agencies we are working in. So today we'll be focusing on Brexit, cybercrime and money laundering. But first of all, I'd like to invite Paul to come up and talk to us about Brexit. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon again everyone. I think it's pretty important at the start that I set the expectation levels right. If anybody's expecting lots of answers about what's going to happen post-Brexit, you're going to be disappointed, so just to make that clear. What I will try and do is just give you a bit of an update about what we have already done in terms of trying to help you be informed about Brexit, some of the areas which I think we and yourselves as firms need to consider, and then talk about how going forward sort of future updates will come to you. So in terms of the work we've done, all the information is available on our website. So if you go into the website, you can just search Brexit and immediately come up. There's a link there to a paper we've already provided, which is Exiting the EU, an update for lawyers. So that's a general guide which we produced fairly promptly following the referendum. I know some copies were available here today. I think actually have all been taken, which shows probably the interest and the concerns perhaps over Brexit. The other point on our website it's worth having a look at is there is a Hot Topics tab. So if you go to the top right-hand side of the website, click on Hot Topics there. That would be, there's a section there specifically on Brexit. And again, I'd encourage you to make a note of that, have a look at it, have a look at the paper, and obviously any future updates we provide will be on that Hot Topics. So hopefully it'll be a good source of information for all of you as we progress. Okay, the key message in terms of Brexit as we stand now is that actually nothing has changed. So as things stand now, UK solicitors can still practice across the European Union and vice versa. The status remains the same. You can still practice under European law directives. The status of registered European lawyers hasn't changed. So as things stand, we are in the same position we were before the referendum. And in that position will remain until we actually agree how we are going to leave the European Union. So issues such as our approach to the single market, free movement in the immigration policy, these are all the factors that will affect how, when we go forward, there will be changes to how we can practice in Europe and European lawyers can practice in the UK. Other issues we've talked about is kind of data protection. Again, position remains the same. Obviously, something should be high and generally reviewed by the Information Commissioner. I suppose from our point of view, in this early stage, what we'll be suggesting is that firms consider where is your data held? Is it held in servers in Europe? What are the consequences potentially if we leave? Consequences of the relation between ourselves and the US, Europe and the US. So these are all sort of things you need to start thinking about in terms of where your data is held. One of the other key issues, of course, is also future primacy and the extent that EU law will affect the UK law. And again, at this stage, that is uncertain. It will depend on negotiations. It will depend on whether we remain part of the European Economic Area, or if we decide to rely on the World Trade Organization rules, or alternatively enter into a specific agreement. So they're all the factors which will impact how influential EU law will be going forward in the UK law. As so we've published a report. It includes a checklist for firms, so some things for you to think about. And we have to acknowledge, this is an unknown. We haven't managed X in Europe before. But whilst your circumstances are unique, many of you within your firms will have dealt with change management before, and this is another way we have to deal with change management. So lots of the same principles will apply. We recommend that you consider the potential impacts on your business, review your business, and consider how it might affect you going forward. Simple things like undertaking a SWOT analysis, understanding what strengths and weaknesses are post the exit from Europe. One thing we really encourage is actually also not just look at risk, which I think is a tendency, but also look at potential opportunities for you and your firm and for your staff. And I think one of the things we're quite keen to mention is to staff is making sure that they are also informed. I think we can concentrate on business, but the staff are working within your businesses. Any period of uncertainty or change causes concerns and can be disturbing. So again, we're encouraging firms to make sure they're as up to date on any movements as possible and referring back to our hot topics so that they can provide support and guidance to their staff. Likewise with your clients, I expect lots of your clients have queries and concerns and be concerned about how it affects their business. It's a serious issue. I expect many of them will come to you for advice, so again, they'll be looking for you to be informed and to provide support where necessary. I think the other thing I suppose we need to emphasise from our point of view, and those who heard Paul Phillips' speech earlier today would have heard this message. From our point of view, Brexit hasn't changed our approach to regulatory reform. From our perspective, it reinforces the need that we have a regulatory framework that encourages innovation and growth. It is going to be a period of potentially significant change. And from our perspective, it's important we have a legal market which is flexible and adaptable. So that's kind of the position we are at with Brexit. Really, this vision just to give you a bit of a brief update in terms of what we've done so far. Make sure you're aware where you can go to the resources. If you have any sort of further questions, we'll have a quick session at the end. We'd be interested to know sort of, what issues you feel you are going to face as firms. And particularly from our point of view, we'd like to know what support we can provide you and how you'd like us to provide that support. So I think we'll pick that up at the end of this presentation. So that's a very quick overshot of Brexit. And now we'll pass over to Debra, who will talk you through the cybercrime.
Good afternoon. So cybercrime is now the most frequently reported category of crime in the UK, and nearly a third of all offences against individuals as reported to the Crime Survey for England and Wales are some form of cybercrime. Law firms are targets for cybercriminals, and that's really on two counts. Firstly, law firms hold a lot of sensitive personal information that is of value to identity thieves, to inside traders, and also those criminals who would like to exploit that information further for their own gain. Secondly, the large sums of money that pass through the client accounts of firms, particularly conveyancers, also make them targets for cyber thieves. And in fact, the great majority of cyber crimes that are reported to us at the SRA are some form of email modification scam that are aimed at stealing client money. We know that cybercrime can cause serious losses, and for example, across the economy for the period of March last year to March this year, £1 billion was lost to businesses in cybercrime. Research also suggests that 43% of small businesses have been targeted by cyber thieves. So it's businesses of all shapes and sizes who can be affected by cybercrime. And we know that Friday afternoon fraud, where law firms get emails purported to be from clients that actually from cyber thieves, actually involve thefts of over £100,000 or more. So the loss of information can be damaging for clients. Obviously the loss of their money, so it's not available when they need it, is very damaging. And the fear of identity theft for clients can be very distressing. And the impact on firms of cybercrime, it can obviously harm client trust and reputation. And the need to replace the losses can and has in the past led to some firms having financial difficulties. It can also lead to legal or regulatory consequences for firms if they have been shown to not have taken appropriate steps to secure their systems. So I'll just now briefly go through some of the more common types of cybercrime that we're seeing in the legal sector. So malware, you may know this as computer viruses. So they're harmful computer programs that once on systems can cause havoc. Quite often they don't just appear on your systems, you have to trick a member of staff into installing this program onto your system, and that can either be through quite an innocuous email attachment or sending an email with a link to a hacked website. And sometimes, unfortunately, it can be due to insider action as well. And a very common form of malware that we're now seeing is ransomware. So the virus actually will send you an email, it will start deleting or encrypting your files and saying that you will only be able to retrieve them if you pay the cyber criminals a ransom. They often impose short deadlines for payment to panic businesses, and sometimes threaten to reveal sensitive information that they claim to have got from your system. The encryption usually can't be broken without the encryption key, but if you do pay the ransom to cyber criminals, there's actually no guarantee that they will give you the encryption key, and they may in fact actually then demand further sums from you. So phishing is when you get fake emails, or vishing is when you get a fake telephone call. Now I remember in the past when the internet first became very popular, we'd quite often get emails purporting to be from a prince from a far off land saying that they were subject to human rights abuses and could they deposit, millions of pounds in their bank account. A few people were taken in by that. It's much more sophisticated these days, and so these fake emails and phone calls tend to be purporting to be from a trusted individual. So they can be very well crafted, very well researched. You can go and stalk people on social media to find out details about them and put that into the emails. A common form of this is CEO fraud, where you get an email is sent to a more junior member of staff, and it's purporting to be from a senior partner or manager asking them to reveal information or bank details. So the most common form of a cybercrime that gets reported to us is some form of email redirection. This is very widespread and has cost businesses globally over $2 billion. So these frauds, when cyber criminals hack into the email account of clients and then will send the law firm, particularly Friday afternoon fraud is an example of this, when you get an email from your client saying that they've changed their bank details and actually it's a cyber criminal wanting you to redirect the funds to them. So conveyancing firms are particularly being targeted by this type of crime. So this all sounds very scary and it is a big risk for firms, but actually there is quite a lot of very straightforward and easy steps you can do to mitigate this risk. And I think that if there's any message you take away from this session today, is that training is key for your staff, because cyber criminals are not directly attacking your systems. What they're directly targeting is your staff, and it's your staff being tricked or yourselves been tricked and duped into clicking on email attachments and so on, who, you know, you're the gatekeepers who allow cyber criminals into your systems. So make yourself a harder target. So keep your antivirus systems up to date. Keep your browsers and operating systems up to date. So it might be quite annoying when you log off at night and Windows wants to do an update, but that's actually really important because Microsoft have found a backdoor for cyber criminals, and that update will give you a patch that will close that. Consider encrypting your drives and your documents. So this is an extra hurdle, so if cyber thieves do get into your system, it's another barrier to your documents. You can set up access controls so that only certain staff can access and modify particular files that have got sensitive information. You need to pay attention to the basics. So one thing that's particularly effective is restricting the ability of your staff to install software on your systems. So for example, if they do click on an email that's purporting to have an invoice that's actually got some malware or some ransomware, if they haven't got administrative rights to install programs on that system, they won't be able to install that ransomware. If you have mobile staff or home working staff, make sure that you have secure remote systems. And you could also consider using digital signatures and encrypted emails so that it's much easier to authenticate and verify the senders of particular emails. So, as I've said before, training is absolutely key to securing your systems. Make sure your staff are informed of the different types of attack that can occur. Make sure that people use good passwords that are at least 8 characters long with a mix of letters, symbols and numbers. And also encourage your staff to take care with social media posts. If they're on Facebook, rather than having a public profile that everyone can see, make sure that it's their friends only, because cyber criminals do find where people work and go and stalk them a little bit on social media, find out information about who their partner's name, their child's name, their pet cat's name, and then can use that to include in emails to win people's confidence or even to guess people's password. So we have guidance on our website in the Risk Outlook, and we've also published a paper earlier this year on IT and innovation that has some helpful guidance about keeping your system secure, and we will be publishing later this year a further updated paper on guidance about dealing with cybercrime. You can also look at Cyber Essentials. This is an industry-backed government scheme that offers advice to help businesses deal with cybercrime. Action Fraud is the National Reporting Centre for Cybercrime and Other Fraudulent Offences, and this offers guidance for businesses. And also, if you have been a victim of a cyber attack, then you need to report this to Action Fraud. And also, you can visit the Information Commissioner's website. They again will offer guidance, particularly about securing confidential information and data. And if you have lost data of this type, again, you will need to contact them to let them know. So in sum, it's all about training your people, making sure that your people are aware and making sure that your systems are secure. There are some quite very simple, easy steps that you can do. You don't need expensive consultants to come in. You can do that if you can afford it, but there are lots of things that you can do that will make it much harder for cyber criminals to target you. So later on, at the end of the session, we can talk about your major concerns that you have about cybercrime, and also if there's anything more that we can do or any guidance that you would like that we can publish that will be of help. So I'll hand over now to James, who will talk to you about money laundering.
Thank you. And I can't stress enough about some of those cyber cases. This is something that frequently comes into my directorate at the SRO. The impact it can have on firms and on the staff involved in being duped is huge. Staff can feel very bad at having compromised the systems of the firm, and that is what people are targeting. They're targeting your staff, not necessarily your systems. So, money laundering, or anti-money laundering, I think is probably the best description. I want to discuss and update you on some important developments which are happening in terms of ensuring that we all have a robust anti-money laundering culture, both across the profession but in the entire regulated sector. I know the SRA and in this forum we've discussed in the past the importance of having policies, but today I want to talk about the practicalities, a bit like the cybercrime, the systems and processes that you have in place within your firm to make sure that you're a hostile environment to money laundering. Over the past 2 years, we've been out and about and spoken to a lot of firms. We've been looking at how the controls are in place, what's working, what's not working, and I want to feed some of that back to you today. There is more detail on our website in our AML report, and within that there is good practice and poor practice examples, which I hope are helpful to you, but also a steer towards where you can get further sources of advice. We're seeing an increase in reports about money laundering, both in terms of money laundering itself and the Proceeds of Crime Act, but also counter-terrorist financing. We're investigating a small number, but a very significant and substantial cases involving many millions of pounds. And we've seen an increase in the interest in this area from law enforcement, both in terms of making reports and intelligence sharing, but also internationally, and an expectation and a willingness for law enforcement and regulators to work more closely together to share information to prevent this activity. And I can't stress enough, the legal services market and solicitors, and particularly your client accounts, are very attractive to organised crime, both in terms of access and infiltration, but also in order to help them launder money. And in terms of where we're at in terms of the framework, the UK will be subject to a Financial Action Task Force, a FATF inspection, and we expect that in spring 2018. So this is the international body will be coming in to inspect the arrangements in the UK then. As I mentioned at the start, in the meantime we have the implementation, irrespective of the Brexit situation, of the 4th EU Money Laundering Directive, and some updates and developments there, particularly in light of the recent attacks that the continent has seen to tighten up the arrangements around counter-terrorist financing. In terms of SARS, suspicious activity reports, over the last year there have been around about 350,000 SAR reports last year. From our sector, 3,600 approximately, and that's a drop year on year. And it equates to about a third of a SAR, if it's possible to have a third of a SAR, for each firm. So by comparison with other sectors, the volume of money going through the sector, that is a relatively modest number of reports. And the National Crime Agency are feeding back, in particular, around the quality of those SARs which they're receiving from the sector. And in particular, the lack of detail being placed in those SARs to allow them to be able to take a view on consent and usefulness of that information. So I come on to talk a little bit about that as we go through. But over the coming year, you can expect a lot of activity on this front as the UK prepares for its inspection, but also as the directive is implemented and transposed into UK law, and also as the Criminal Finances Bill makes its passage through the House, with the provisions in there around suspicious activity reports, the expectation that regulated sector individuals will cooperate with each other around the production and completion of SARs, and driving up the quality and number of SARs across the sector. So, our thematic review into procedures was published in May of this year, and I want to focus on our findings and information around three key themes, but also two more that I want to put on your attention. So the first is the role of the reporting officer. The second is the quality of basic systems, policies and controls within firms. The importance of client due diligence, but also a bit like cybercrime, staff awareness, and recording and reporting, both in terms of SARs, but also decisions you may take as MLROs, or your MLROs may take, not to report, not to make a SAR, and making sure that there's enough detail and quality in those reports. So our key findings. We were very pleased that there was a good general compliance with the need to have an MLRO who was aware of their responsibility, But that varied significantly from firm to firm, and in particular around the training that the MLRO had for their responsibilities, and also their awareness of the latest developments around the legislation and the requirements and the SARS regime. There was a concern that some MLROs hadn't had any training in their role. It was a responsibility that they'd taken on, and they'd either had not had any training or development, or they had very little time within their performance management system to devote to their MLRO activity, a key activity that is important for the firm. In terms of policy, systems and controls, a wide variety of views about what constitutes high-risk work, work that might be subject to inspection and SARS. Obviously, firms who had property and transactional work were at greater risk and should consider within that the risk to their workload overall, particularly around source of funding and the differentiation between source of funding and suspicious activity, and the need to provide information about both of those in sufficient detail for the SAR. In terms of due diligence, there was, as you'd expect from the sector, a high recognition of the importance of due diligence. We did see a lot of firms using automated IT systems to assist with this. That's good, that's great, and there were some good checks around the amount of work that could be done before those background checks had been completed. The thing to bear in mind, a bit like the cybercrime, is the people who want to access you and access your client account for purposes of money laundering are aware of those electronic systems and will often try to present in a way that will seek to defeat those systems. So the systems are great, they're good, but there's nothing better than the staff being aware and training and challenging, and if things look odd, they might be odd. You need to do and ask further questions, enhance due diligence. We're seeing examples where the presentation of the transaction or the individual, you can see, has actually been deliberately presented in order to prevent it throwing a flag on the system. So something to bear in mind in terms of your training and updating of staff. As I say, good compliance, people were generally aware of the importance of the due diligence and the need to have controls in place within the firm around what work could be done while due diligence was taking place. With particular, we've been seeing some examples where some clients are pressing money into the client account and are seeking to move things through very quickly in the expectation it will take a little bit of time before the due diligence is completed, and almost trying to force the firm into moving the money through before those background checks can be taken. A bit like the cybercrime, key issue, staff training and awareness, and particularly staff who have particular roles, money laundering reporting officers, deputy money laundering reporting officers. Being able for staff across the organisation to know how to make a report within the firm, who to contact, how to contact, making sure that people in those roles are accessible, so you can get hold of the MLRO if you need to, that the NCA can get hold of the MLRO if they need to. Particularly times around mergers, transition of partners, contingency planning, making sure that systems are in place and staff are aware of what they need to do if they're presented by somebody who's trying to push something through very quickly, but they can't get hold of suitably trained staff or somebody who can take a decision on the case. Particular emphasis on finance staff to spot warnings. They can sometimes be a little bit more tuned in terms of looking at, well, what's behind this? Where's this money coming from? We may know the individual, but do we know where the money's coming from? So generic across-the-board training may not be appropriate for everybody within your firm. There might be a particular emphasis you need to place on finance staff. And the other thing is to keep things up to date, keep training up to date. I think some of the firms we went into, for example, were referencing things like the Serious Organised Crime Agency, which was abolished about 6-7 years ago, and a couple even mentioned DENSIS, the predecessor to that. So you do have to wonder how frequently training is taking place if somebody's referring to an organisation and a regime that went about 10 years ago. So important to make sure things are kept up to date, refreshers in place. A bit like the cybercrime, the people involved in this kind of activity are always evolving and changing their approach. They focus on the client account, they look at the systems. The aim is to make yourself a hostile environment to this kind of activity and to be able to deal with it when you see it. Around recording and reporting, the vast majority of people were compliant with the recording and reporting obligations, but we did see some firms failing to record all information, and importantly, failing to record key pieces of information where they decided not to make a SAR. And the particular implications which that could have under the provisions are quite stark. So if you're deciding not to make a SAR, you've got to record enough information so that if one of my team or somebody from the NCA comes in 6, 12, 18 months later to ask you, why did you decide, why did you make the decision that that wasn't suspicious? Why did you decide that? What further checks did you make to establish that degree of certainty? You are able to tell us. You are able to set those out, you are able to evidence those. They don't have to be complex, intricate systems, but you need to have the basic level of information that you can explain how that decision was arrived at. And again, the sort of theme that some staff weren't quite sure about who to approach, what the threshold for suspicion might be. Was it the transaction that was suspicious, or was it the individual? Was it the source of funds? So continue to make sure that you've got the best training, recording and reporting systems you can have in your firm. So that's a quick overview of the money laundering side, and a bit like the other two topics, there's a lot of work going to be happening over the coming year, and in the discussion it'd be helpful to know from yourselves what we could do more to help you. Is it sharing case examples? Is it sharing good practice? That kind of thing. What's concerning you, and what would you be looking from us to help you through this journey over the coming year? So I'd like to invite Debra and Paul up to help us, and I'm happy to take questions or hear suggestions from the room. Yeah, we've got a microphone to...
Ransomware, and I just wondered whether the SRA regard that as a reportable breach, a successful ransomware attack.
Yes. Yes. Well, no, but sometimes it's helpful to know about near misses as well as where something's happened, because it allows our risk assessment team to share that information. A bit like the fraud alerts and risks and the warning notices that we put out. The criminal community will share what's working through the dark web very quickly, and just as we sometimes see across a very short space of time cloned websites that look very similar, we'll sometimes see ways of working that look very similar, or the same kind of malware. And the internet firms and the big IT firms, they're also doing the same and sharing this across the regulated community. So there's an element of let us know so we can let others know so they don't fall into the same trap. And we do see some of those patterns. Sorry?
I've spoken to a lot of colleagues who are not reporting successful ransomware attacks, so you may want to make your position clear.
We will do, yeah. That's helpful to know, thank you.
Sorry, can I just add a point to that? I think it's important to make the distinction between keeping you informed, and I agree that things like successful ransomware and near misses are things that should be you should be advised about because of the impact on the profession. But there is a distinction between that and a reportable breach in terms of the CULT's reporting obligations, because I don't think that that is a reportable breach from a CULT point of view.
I mean, we would put it through our risk assessment process. So in terms of the follow-up activity, we would look at that and what's happened and the impact. But I think it helps the profession as a whole understand what's happening, so it's useful to be aware of that. And it's the same with the cloned websites. The more we can get information out there, because some of these are getting very sophisticated, and some of the following on social media is very targeted to allow them to access client funds.
So are you saying it is or isn't?
If there's been a malware attack and it's been successful, certainly report it through. That's really important. I do want you.
Sorry? Well, the question was: is it a report? Is it an obligation on the CULT to report?
Yes, we would want to know if there's been a successful malware attack. Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. So please report it through. But what we'll do is we'll clarify it in a warning notice. So we've got that information out there for you. There, the gentleman in the middle, if that's okay.
Our IT people are starting to tell us of increasing attacks through iPhones, through either text messaging or through those square funny panels that you can click your iPhone against to read all sorts of useful data. So those are the latest things they're really worrying about at the moment.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of the text version, but we haven't seen, is it the QLR codes? Yeah, we've not seen that yet, but we've seen a couple of the text examples.
Fake ones of those, you go into a restaurant, you click on those, it's actually fake.
And accesses the systems through self-automatic. There was we're seeing texts as well being used as a way of so instead of emailing you an attachment which you download, you'll get either a blank text with a link you click on, or it'll say something like "see below," and usually a sort of smiley emoticon. You click on it thinking it's going to be a message coming through, but what they're doing is downloading malware onto your phone in the expectation they can then access your computer systems through your phone. It's a particular issue with remote workers.
Thanks. Just touching back on the original point you were discussing about reporting, I think this is fairly fundamental actually. This is a change for you in that you're going to receive a lot more information if it's really clear to people they can report without that being seen as a formal report by the COLF. And I don't think that is clear to firms at the moment. So as this grows and you want to know more, you need to make that really transparent.
I'll make sure that we put something on the website so that clarifies that for you, yes. There's a gentleman here next.
Sorry, this is a question about Brexit actually. You've obviously rightly said that at the moment, the status quo continues and we're under the existing regime. It would be useful actually if the SRA, the law side or whoever, might be necessary to tell us quite what the regime was before 1998 when the Establishment Directive came in place, how English law firms were able to operate in European countries without the benefit of that, because that might give some indication of what things will look like after the negotiations are concluded.
I think that's a very good point. I mean, it's those we'll ask you to feedback those kind of ideas. In the moment, we're in the same position as many of you. We'll be having conversations with the government, with relevant parties, but actually, it's a good idea to have a look about what was the situation before, because we end up replicating that and start having a look at that and seeing how it affects our view and how you operate. So it's a good idea. Thank you.
Just going back to the cybercrime, I would find it really helpful if you could, when you discover a new scam or problem, if you communicated that really quickly, because you may know about it, but I don't know about it. I think that's fairly obvious.
So we have got the SRA Scam Aware is on our website, and also if you look on Twitter, when we find a new scam, and bogus firms as well. So, but we can. You're shaking your head, so I suggest that there's more you think that we can do. So, and I know people are saying that it's a burden on firms. It seems maybe to report these unsuccessful attacks and scams. But if you do that, then we can produce this information that you've requested.
The reason I shake my head about Twitter is that my view of Twitter is it's a shouting. All it is shout. And if you don't happen to be looking on your particular tweet when it goes there, it just disappears. I find Twitter, well, by the by, I don't think the use of Twitter is helpful. Because some of us don't even follow Twitter.
Okay.
I think it would be much more useful if there was a regular email
Right.
every time you update your website
Okay.
on these scams saying there's a new scam in town.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy for you technical boss just to send it to us and then we can look on it. But expecting us to constantly be checking out it's not a realistic expectation.
Okay. So, like I say, it is on the website, but yeah, we can talk to our comms team about that. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Don't put a link to the website.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we've had issues with that before.
It wasn't such a question, but I seem to get an email from somebody drawing my attention to the latest scams. Maybe it's the Law Society. I thought it was the SRA. Sorry, somebody emails me. I must have subscribed to something. I think it must be the Law Society then that emails me. Can't hear you. Sorry. Somebody emails me regularly with sort of scams that are out. I thought it was the SRA, but clearly it isn't. So I think it must be the Law Society. So I think that if you go on the Law Society website, you can subscribe to get emails for the latest scams and that sort of thing. And I found it's not, you don't get too many emails. You do just get, and it's normally a really bullet point if it just makes you think, oh, well, that's the latest thing going, or watch out for that, and I circulate it around the office.
Yeah, but we'll certainly look at setting something up that we can share, as you say, making sure it's clear from us rather than anything you from.
As a follow-on to that, traditionally we've relied on the Law Society for guidance and support on money laundering and practice advice. Is this a change of emphasis at the SRO, and are we going to see a different split?
No, I don't think so. I mean, in many ways we've always been working at this in the background and helping with this, but we obviously want to do more as we're seeing more instances coming through. So if we're getting that information in, then we want to share it to help you. Somebody in, then somebody at the back there.
Do you think the SRA are actually doing enough to educate consumers about how they can be the weak link with cybercrime?
I think it's a very good point. I think there's always more we can do around this point. I mean, how many of you seen the sort of Barclays information, the adverts that they've been putting out? Not on this theme, but on similar themes. That is, I think there's always more that can be done on this front, and we're very much sort of looking at what can be done to help. Particularly with some of the latest developed scams and attacks, it becomes quite difficult to understand which part of the transaction is now being subject to that kind of attack. And so you had a question at the front.
Yeah. It was just, are you going to provide any training for money laundering?
So the question was about training for money laundering. We're going to provide some updates and some information. We have been going out to visit sort of local law societies and to do some training there as well. We'd like to do more of that. The Home Office is putting together a big package of work in this area as well, and we're working with them and the Law Society to sort of look to see how we can support some of that over the coming year.
Just to add in on that, it was mentioned in James' speak, we did do a thematic programme on AML. We have issued a report earlier this year, and again that was us going to see in firms and speaking to people and understanding the issues they're having actually in the firms. So again, we've tried to give some good and poor practices on that, just to try and provide some extra guidance to firms, because we're conscious it's an area where some firms struggle. So it's worth having a look at that. It's published in May this year.
Sorry, it's me again. So, excuse me. In terms of training, for those of you who aren't aware, the Law Society runs MLRO training. The roadshows that go from sort of this time of year through until the spring. I know because I'm doing one in Cardiff. The other point that I wanted to make, which I'm not sure has come out from the comments so far on money laundering, is that the consultation on the fourth directive is out at the moment. The Law Society has issued some information about this, and from my point of view, for those of you who don't know me, you can see Amy over there. I do a lot of work on AML and have done for very many years. The important point is to respond to that consultation, because there are things in there that will have a real impact on us, particularly around pooled client account, simplified due diligence being removed, unless we continue the good fight that Amy's been putting forward so far. But please do have a look at the consultation. It's only open until the 10th of November. After that, there will be a further 4-week consultation on the regulations. But please do respond.
Okay. No further questions? Are there any?
Just one. You mentioned an FATF investigation. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
It's an international organisation, the Financial Action Task Force. They will go into countries and they will carry out an inspection of all their arrangements. We're expecting the UK's in the spring of 2018. So that
what I meant by that was, to what extent should we be worried about a knock on the door?
I want to be looking at a whole sector. Their model is they may sample, but they will look at the whole sector. It won't be about individuals.
James, can I just pick that up? I'm Amy Bell, I'm the chair of the Money Laundering Task Force at the Law Society. We're working with Treasury on what we can expect of the mutual evaluation process. What we know from Ireland, that are currently going through that process, is that there'll be a small number of private sector organisations, probably no more than one, that will be asked to give evidence as to how they comply with the regime. So the vast majority of the profession shouldn't really get a knock on the door in relation to that process. Yes. Well, 10,000 to 1. So yeah, there will be more information coming from the Law Society about it. It's very much an exercise where the regulators, supervisors for AML, speak direct to the inspectors. They will want to speak to somebody on the ground, as it were, but it's not likely to be a lottery of all the firms in the country.
Great, thank you. So if there's no more questions, shall we go for lunch? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Lunch is back upstairs in the main rooms where you came in, where the tea and coffees were.
It is actually easy to go out those doors.
Out those doors there.
Right, guys.